right, are you ready to clean up the living areas? No, you're not. I don't blame you. Sometimes I like to ignore things too. But your living areas, we're just going to combine your dens, your living rooms, your dining rooms, because they're all cleaned basically the same way. Now, some of the major problems in the living areas is how to clean wood furniture. It's very difficult. Now, there is something that I want you to be aware of. I carry a wonderful product called Wood Care that does a great job. I'll talk a little bit more about this in just a second. What you need to be aware of when you're using a wood treatment, a wood polish, a furniture polish of any kind, if you've been using a product like Indust, Liquid Gold, something along those lines, sometimes one product may not like what's in another product, and it can cause a gunky buildup on your furniture, and it can actually cause the sealant to soften. So if you've been using something like Indust or Pledge or Liquid Gold, don't start using my Wood Care because it may interact with that. Now, other products like Guardsman and things like that, will Wood Care work with those? Oh yeah, perfectly safe to use. But just be aware of what you're using and don't necessarily mix your Wood Care products. But I have a product called Wood Care that I always test 7 or 8 products before I decide which ones to bring into my line. This is beeswax based, it's 100% natural, no petroleum distillates in it. A lot of these products, a lot of the Wood Care products contain petroleum distillates. It's carcinogenic and it's not real healthy for the wood either. So the Wood Care is a beeswax based product. You take that and just use a light cloth like a lint-free towel. I carry the baby diapers that are great for dusting, polishing, that type of thing. So just pour a little bit of Wood Care on there and wipe it on your wood furniture or on the wood cabinets in the kitchen. You know, it works for those as well. Now the Wood Care will remove a lot of, you know how in the bathroom you can get the wood cabinets can kind of start looking a little bit gray and they just look dull. And on the outside in the kitchen area, they can start looking kind of dull and they just lose that luster. Well, the Wood Care will pull that luster back in your wood. It'll make that color pop back out again. It doesn't darken it, doesn't change the color. It just makes it revives it, is what I'm trying to say. It just revives that wood. And because it will deep treat it and it'll condition it as well. So it'll remove most water spots, unless they're really super deep. It'll remove a lot of water spots. It'll remove some scratches from your wood, and it's the only one that will. Now, the problem that I had when I was cleaning houses was, okay, I needed to treat this wood furniture once or twice a year, but what was safe to use in between? Well, there was nothing on the market that I could use to dust the wood furniture with on a weekly basis without possibly causing a buildup, you know, from using like Pledge or something like that. The neat part about Wood Care is you can dilute this 6 parts water to 1 part Wood Care, put it in a spray bottle, and then have that to use on your cabinets and your wood furniture all year long. And it will actually continue conditioning your wood furniture and your cabinets, so it's great that way. Now your living areas, you're also dealing with things like perhaps pleated shades. In a motorhome and an RV, they have what's called a day-night shade. There's one section of it that you pull down and it lets the sun in. There's another section that you pull down and it keeps the sun out for nighttime use. Those day-night shades can be a little bit tricky to use. I carry a product called the Dry Sponge, and this, because you can't use moisture on those shades, it will ruin them. Any kind of moisture can damage those shades. So the Dry Sponge, you just use dry, wipe across those shades, and it will remove all of the dust and all of the dirt. In fact, a funny story, I had a lady at one of my seminars came up to my booth afterwards, and she said, I religiously vacuum my day-night shades every other week. You can't tell me that they are still dirty. And I said, I'll tell you what, let me give you my table sample. Take it back to your motorhome, and if you don't get any additional dirt off of this dry sponge coming off of your shades, you keep it. But I said, if it does come off, I want you back at my booth, because I want it back so I can show people the amount of dirt that it does take off. She came back and she said, I just called the rest of my rally group. I need 13 of your dry sponges. Because she said, I was shocked the amount of dirt that came off of my day-night shade. Now, these are also good for removing pet hair from fabric furniture. It will also just pull up dust and dirt that's on fabric furniture as well. And they're really neat for cleaning screens, whether it's in your home or in your RV. You can use these dry, wipe them across your screens, and those get clean. You get the dust and the dirt off of those, and you don't have to dampen those down with water. So you don't have to try and shake all the water out of them and let them dry and make sure the water's not going to drip back on your screens. Dust them off. Take this thing outside, just clean it by using a light grit sandpaper and just sand the dirt off and keep on going. So that's going to clean those day-night shades. Now, wood shades that are in a lot of homes, or the foxwood shades, you know, the fake wood shades, those, there's a neat way of cleaning those. You want to take, again, your lint-free towel, spray those types of shades down with your diluted wood care. That's where this is really neat. Turn the slats so they face downward, facing you. Take a cloth like our baby diaper cloth, spray that down with the wood care, start up at the top, and then just wipe your way down that one side with the wood care. All of the dust and the dirt will come off. Now at home, in a motorhome or an RV, you can't pull those blinds out. But at home, when you get the first side done, then flip the slats to where they're facing upward, pull the shade out, walk around in back of the shade, and then wipe it down from the other side, and you've got both sides of those shades completely clean for you. And it's done. It's taken you maybe 5 minutes to do it. It's pretty fast. Now, in a motorhome where you have like the vinyl or the metal slatted shades up over your kitchen sinks, or if you have vinyl or metal shades, you know, at home, that's where you want to use the Benya. The Clean-Ease will clean them, but Clean-Ease also has, remember, it has an organic, it contains an organic acid in it, and sometimes the acid can be kind of hard on plastic and metal. So you want to use the Benya that's streak-free. It's perfectly safe to use. Again, clean them the same way. Now, in a motorhome, because you can't pull the shades out, they're a little hard to get to. You don't want a rag flipping around like this and flopping you and hitting you in the face when you're trying to clean those things, because they're a little awkward to get to anyway. So what you do is go grab a pair of old white tennis socks, some white tube socks, put that on your hand, spray all around it with the Benya, and then just take your hand and wipe down the slats. They're fairly thin, so just slat by slat wipe them down. It just takes a few minutes, but it's easier to use a sock on those shades than it is to use a cloth on them. And actually, when my mother, a little trick about dusting, when you go to dust your furniture with the wood care, my mother had arthritis in her hands real bad, and when she was still alive, she wanted to do as much as she could to keep her house clean. So with her arthritis, she had a hard time holding things. So I had her put a rubber glove on her right hand so she could grasp objects, and then a cotton tube sock on her other hand with a little bit of my wood care. And she could dust with her left hand and then grab objects pretty easily, like a lampshade and things like that, and grab them with her right hand. and it made her job just a whole lot easier. So a little tip there if you have some, some hand dexterity problems. Okay, other problems with cleaning in a living area is like fabric furniture. You get a stain, say somebody spills a drink on a fabric furniture, or an ink pen, on fabric furniture, something like that. The problem with fabric furnitures is that any kind of a liquid, like if you go to spray Cleanies on, say, an ink stain on fabric furniture, my number one rule, give your product time to work. Okay, well, when you have a liquid cleaner, that's just going to penetrate right through that stain and get down to the foam underneath it. So it's really not going to help a lot to get rid of the stain. And outside of that, it can spread. A liquid can spread the stain out. You don't want it spreading any further. So a little trick with that, go into the grocery store and buy a can of foaming shaving cream. Okay, now foaming shaving cream has both denatured alcohol and rubbing alcohol. And denatured alcohol is a very good cleaner. But the foam is not going to cause the stain to spread further. It's going to stay on the surface of your fabric furniture where it has time. Remember, give your product time to work. It has time to dissolve that stain, but without spreading it and without seeping it through. Then rinse that off. Just grab a cloth, blot that off with your fingers. Like I showed you, just kind of twist it a little bit and just blot it off with your fingers. Rinse it out of there finally with some vinegar and water. If the stain's not gone, leave it alone because you can make it a whole lot worse. So be real careful treating those stains. Now the other problem that you run into in cleaning inside furniture and in your living areas is leather, vinyl, and ultra leather. Now vinyl furniture, all three of them can be treated with my product called Leather Care. And again, I tested like 8 or 9 different products. And this one, the other cleaners would clean the surface dirt off. But I'd look back and here would be these little tiny dots of dirt down in the crevices that you find in leather and vinyl. And the ultra leather doesn't have that because it's completely smooth. But vinyl and leather have these little crevices. Leaving dirt behind, when I professionally cleaned houses for 12 years, leaving dirt behind on a surface is not okay with me. Leather Care was the only product that I found that actually deep cleaned into those crevices and pulled the dirt out from in there. So it's neat. You do want to use a damp cloth with this. Just dampen a cloth down a little bit with water, pour the Cleanies on, wipe it on. It'll take a little bit for it to dry, but again, there's no petroleum distillates because a lot of these leather cleaners will leave a sticky residue that can get on your clothes. Well, that sticky residue generally is a petroleum distillate. You shouldn't be using it inside your home. You shouldn't be using it outside either, but inside the home it's carcinogenic. This is made with beeswax. It's all completely natural. So it's easy to use, so it doesn't leave that sticky residue behind. But it does both. The neat thing about this and my Wood Care, they both clean and condition. So this will clean and condition your leather, vinyl, and your ultra leather so it won't dry and crack on you. So it'll extend the life of that tremendously. Now again, when I was cleaning professionally, it was like, okay, fine, I've got this nice leather cleaner and I can clean it, but how do I wipe down this leather furniture on a weekly basis when I'm cleaning these homes? There wasn't anything on the market. I had to go through full strength with these cleaners every time I cleaned, and it was really time consuming. So take this after you clean through, definitely wipe your furniture down about twice a year, full strength, so you deep condition it. In between times, dilute this down, 6 parts water, 1 part Leather Care. Just spray it on your furniture, wipe it off, and you've got it cleaned. So it's real fast and it's real easy to use. Now, a couple little tricks. Here we're going to talk mostly about RVs and motorhomes. But in an RV and a motorhome, you have vents on the top, you have fans on the top. Those need to be cleaned. You've got to get the cobwebs out of them. What do you do with that? Head into the hardware store. You're going to buy a 1.5-inch paintbrush. You're also going to buy several different sizes of a sponge paintbrush. And I'll tell you about those in just a minute. But the sponge paintbrush, I don't clean houses unless I have one of these tucked in my back pocket. Because when I run across cobwebs on door hinges or across the top of my curtain, my curtains, or in the corners of my windows, it will sweep all of that stuff out, so it's easy then to vacuum it up. But on the ceilings of your coach, you have things, the fans and the vents, it's hard to get up in there to dust them. So just reach up with your 1.5-inch paintbrush and it'll dust the cobwebs out of there. Now with the sponge paintbrushes, you take that and dip it in some sudsy water and then just clean the slats. They're thin enough to reach in between the slats, but you can press them up against the slat itself and get them nice and clean for you. And then the sponge paintbrushes are awesome. You'll start finding more and more things to clean with those, like around your doorknob or around the knobs on your dishwashers, your stoves. It gets into those little crevices where it's just hard, to get your fingernail in those little crevices. They reach in there and clean all of those little areas. And I've got some tips for cleaning on the outside, for cleaning your cars and your RVs with those. So make sure you pick up several different sizes of sponge paint brushes because you'll use those quite a bit. Okay, some other little areas that get kind of tricky, particularly inside a motorhome or an RV, are some of the RVs and the motorhomes have what they call carpeted ceilings. Now, if your ceiling is made with the ultra leather, you can use my Leather Care to clean those, dilute it down, dampen a towel down, spray it on a towel, dampen your towel down. You can just extend my handle up and go up and just run that towel then across the ceiling and with the Leather Care, and it'll dust and clean those ceilings for you. So that's the way you clean those. But with the carpeted ceilings, it looks like a real very, very, very thin, fine carpet. They have a couple issues. First of all, you can get some gray streaks coming across your ceiling. You also get some black marks around your fantastic vents or around your fans, or your fantastic fans or your vents, one of the two. Now you want to remember with those carpeted ceilings that they are glued to the ceiling. They're not stapled on, they're glued on. You cannot take my Clean-Ease and use it on those carpeted ceilings because Clean-Ease is a degreaser. Degreasers of any kind of a degreaser, mine or anybody else's, will soften that adhesive on the ceilings, and it will cause the ceilings to loosen because the adhesive gets softened and the carpeting will come down. So what do you do with those things? Again, grab your can of foaming shaving cream. Don't use the gel because the gel does not have the denatured alcohol. But with the gray streaks that form, around the fans and the vents and across, across the ceiling, use the foaming shaving cream, spray a little bit of it on your fingertips, just very, very lightly, blot it onto those spots, and then take a terry cloth towel, dampen it down with some vinegar and water, and what you're going to do is use your two knuckles like this, poke it into that towel, use your knuckles and face your wrist to where it's facing you. Now poke your knuckles onto that spot and twist it clockwise. Remember how we talked about when we were talking about carpet care, that carpet fibers are twisted clockwise? So you're twisting in the direction of the carpet fibers that are on your ceiling. You're removing that gray stuff, but without damaging and leaving fuzzy spots on the carpeting. Now the other problem that happens is, say you get a roof in your, or a leak in your roof, and you get brown spots that form on these carpeted ceilings. I want you to go to the store and get a fresh bottle of hydrogen peroxide. Now, why a fresh bottle, a brand new bottle of hydrogen peroxide? If your peroxide's been sitting around for 5 or 6 months, it's lost its umph to clean. It just says, nah, I'm not going to work anymore. So get some fresh peroxide and some fresh baking soda for the same reason. You will mix a very, very thin paste of baking soda and peroxide. You don't want it thick, you want it very, very thin. Now put down some towels or some plastic on the floors, cover any furniture that's around. You're going to take that mixture, pat it on the ceiling, and then just let that set for 30 minutes, okay? Then take and pour the peroxide in a spray bottle, and then go back up and respray the baking soda and the peroxide that's already up there. Respray it, because that will reactivate the baking soda. Now what the baking soda does is it bubbles and it fizzles, and that fizzing action will help remove the stain, that water spot stain, from the carpeting. It'll pull it out of there completely. And when you get done with that, chances are the first treatment, you will usually get rid of the entire stain the first treatment. The next day, if it's not completely gone, just respray it with a little bit more peroxide and you've got that spot taken care of.